It's 7 o'clock. Shall we kick off? Welcome to everyone to our finance and governance meeting. We have them approximately every 6 weeks. It's been exactly 6 weeks, I think, since our last meeting. Welcome to those watching online. Apologies have been received from Councillor Bell. Councillor Bound has kindly agreed to be his substitute this evening. There aren't any other further apologies or substitutions, and everyone else on the committee is quite clearly here. So I propose that we accept the apologies. Alex, second that. Thank you. Votes for? Unanimous. Wonderful. Item 3 is the declarations of interest that is pertaining to particular grant applications that are coming up later in the evening. Councillor Furman's declared a non-pecuniary interest in the Triton BJJ application as a member. Are there any other further declarations of interest? Thank you. Councillor O'Leary.
Yes, I have to declare an interest as a trustee of the front skate park, so I will not be partaking in that debate. And I can leave the room if required.
Thank you.
Exactly the same.
Excellent. You are also Councillor O'Leary.
Your wishes.
Thank you, Councillor.
I'd like to declare an interest in the seafront taps project, please, because I haven't been licensed for a beach tent right by the taps.
Okay.
It's not the grants, but over on the agenda.
No, absolutely understood. Wonderful. The votes on that 2 weeks. So let's move on to the next item, item 4, the minutes of the last meeting. Our last meeting was on 12th of June. They've all been circulated before the meeting, so I propose that we accept those as a true and fair reflection of that last meeting. Thank you very much. Councillor Harris, votes for? Again. That will be great. Yes. Wonderful. Item 5, councillor questions. I'm not aware that we've received any prior to the meeting. Does any member have a pressing question they would like to ask now? Don't feel compelled. Thank you very much. We'll move on to item 6, which are public questions. There are none pre-notified that I'm aware of. Again, as we rattle through the first 5 items, does anyone in the public gallery have anything pressing that they'd like to ask? No? Wonderful. Move on to item 7, which is the Louviers Society annual report and grant. The report's already been circulated to all the council members. So, Councillor Brooks, have you got anything to add over and above the
Anymore.
Excellent. Councillor Brooks, sorry. Alderman, I do apologise.
Nothing to add to what's in the report. So if anybody has any questions on that, to fill those.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. The officer recommended, sorry, do any of the other councillors have anything that they'd like to add around this particular? No? Well, the officer recommendation is that we agree the grant of £850 to the Louviers Society to support their work in this financial year. As there were no other questions around that, I'll propose that. Oh, Councillor Wells would like to propose it. Thank you.
I'd like to second.
Councillor Nicholson, I'll second it. Votes for? Unanimous again, Chair. Excellent. Thank you very much. Item 8 are the grant applications, which the Deputy Town Clerk is going to introduce.
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep this very brief. Members will have had the applications for the 6 grants, which are on the agenda for consideration this evening. The grants have been considered by the grants working group, which is in accordance with the grants policy, which was agreed back in March 2024, and we are now following that as our process. I think that's all I need to say at this stage, Chair. We've got the applicants here who will be able to answer any additional questions that members may have, but I'll just hand back to you to go through them.
Thank you very much. Councillor Harris.
I would like to propose that we approve all of the grants at the same time, immediately. We don't need to look at each individually. They have been recommended to us by the grants committee, and the idea was that the grants committee would do the work for the whole committee. We have a £4 million budget. I'm going to take a little bit of your information, I'm afraid, Jill. And we should be looking very closely at that. What we found over the last few years was that we spent a vast proportion of our time looking at these grants, which totaled £50,000, when we've got a £4 million budget to look at and see how we're spending that properly and effectively. That's why we put together a grants committee. It was meant to look to see if there were any issues that we needed to tease out with the people who have asked for those grants. And that's why I think that as they have recommended that we fully accept the grants that are in front of us, we should now just take a vote on agreeing all of them. And I would propose that we vote for that.
No, I'll second.
Thank you. Recognising that you've proposed and seconded the motion, Councillor Weller did indicate she'd like to speak on that before we second it.
In this particular instance, because we've had four councillors declaring an interest, I think the ones that there is no non-pecuniary interest in, we could take as a block. The others will need to be taken separately, because those people will want, they'll want to be approving ones that they're able to, and abstaining from the ones that they're unable to. So that's what I would suggest. Hopefully someone will second me on that. And I just would like to say that I absolutely approve of all of these things, and I'm really pleased that the grants committee have looked at all of it. But I think we need to be careful about sustainability with these going forward, and bearing in mind that part of the idea always was that we would not pay, unless exceptional circumstances, we would not pay salaries, because otherwise every year the organisation will be coming to us asking for help with salaries, and that's not a sustainable structure. As I say, there are exceptions to that. That's all I need to say. Thank you, Chairman.
It's good. No, thank you very much. Councillor O'Leary.
Yes, I agree with Councillor Weller on the issue of where there are conflicts of interest declared on some of the items. I think there should be, however, opportunity for us, any members, to raise any issues they have with any of the grants. It might only be £50,000, but it's still £50,000 of taxpayers' money, and there might be some questions from committee members on those. Personally, I have no objections to any of the grant applications on here, but I can't speak for the rest of my colleagues. And the other thing I'd like to add is it was requested, I believe, from the previous committee that members or representatives from these groups come to these meetings to speak to us or to answer any questions on these applications. I don't see the point in making them come to the meeting if we're just going to basically not rubber stamp them, but prove them on block at the meeting. I just think, what's the point of getting them to come here? Thank you very much. See you later, all approved. I just think you do one or the other. There's no point doing both.
I'm aware that Councillor Taylor, you'd like to speak. Around that, it is perhaps a compromise ongoing. I think it is important that people are here. I don't think it should be a rubber stamping exercise. Absolutely not. I think perhaps I like the concept of being able to block vote. However, perhaps it's the order that we do items, and that we give councillors the opportunity to ask any questions they have before we vote on them en masse. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor, and then
I forgot what I was going to say. No, I'm very much in favour of voting for these on this. Yes, we are custodians of public money, but I think we have to get a sense of proportion from time to time. In this, we're looking at about 1.25% of our budget. Now, I seem to remember when we set this council up, on the first full council we had the full accounts of this council. We were looking at things like how many paper clips we'd bought, how much we'd spent on eBay. And we said, that is absolutely ludicrous. We'll get rid of that. We're not interested in that. And this, to me, still comes within that sort of thing, because we're only looking at up to 3,000, 5,000 as next section on here. And I think if we're going to start basically looking at each spending committee time, looking at each of these, then I think we've actually lost the plot. There are far bigger things. I suggest tonight that we're going to spend more time looking at grant applications than we are going to do budget monitoring. And to me, budget monitoring is infinitely more important than on a grand scale. And that isn't meant to be disrespectful to anybody who's turned up, but it's just a sense of proportion of what we're doing. One thing I am a little bit concerned about is that we are 3 months into this financial year and we've spent, if these are all approved, we've spent around half of our money already. And I think I noticed on the next item that the Grant Policy Working Group are going to be doing some more work. I think it would be useful for them to look at how we distribute the money throughout the year, whether we want to have 6-month blocks. What I don't want to do is get to August and we've spent the entire lot to the end of the year. And anybody who wants to come in and put it on a Christmas event, they're not going to have a cat and hell's chance of getting any money because it's all been spent. The other way we need to look at this, I think, is £3,000 the right amount, and I personally think it is, but it is one of the options we could throw in. The other thing is, do we want to increase our grant pot? So I think there are options around there that we do need to look at. And if the working group could take that up and probably have a Teams meeting or something and just bottom that out where we're actually going to from here. I think that is all I wanted to say. I think there was something else I've forgotten it. I'll come back.
If it comes back to you, then at that point, thank you. No, I think those are very good regarding the grant policy, the working group, and potentially another working group to thrash out exactly what our policy should be ongoing. We have leapt ahead a little bit, maybe, but no, it's
the same group.
Yeah, absolutely. And those are good points, and we'll come on to that later. Councillor Dickinson.
Thank you very much, Chair. What was the result of the working group on this? Because I remember my email trail is correct. Myself and Councillor Dickinson were against it. Councillor Taylor had reservations and said no. And Councillor Berman wanted it done en bloc. Am I correct?
I didn't have reservations. I wanted it done en bloc.
Right, so that's 2 and 2. How was it decided?
It's decided by
It's
this group.
decided here. This is what we're discussing now.
So we are discussing now
Yeah.
whether or not we should vote en bloc.
Yeah, that's all.
Well, I can't vote en bloc because I have a pecuniary interest. So I can't vote.
We've discussed that.
Agreed.
No.
Councillor Nicholson.
I haven't got any problems with most of the grants, but I do have not problems, and I'm for program, but I have got questions to ask.
Yeah.
And so I would be against voting on block because we've not been given an opportunity to ask these questions.
No, the chair has already said we can ask the questions before we have the vote.
So should we therefore go through each one now, which it seems to me is what we're doing?
No, we're just, if you've got a question, ask it.
Right.
Yeah.
Which point?
The chair will direct you.
Thank you.
Councillor Taylor.
Can I just
Councillor.
come back and try and get my head round, if we're going to start discussing this again, what is the point of having a working group? Because as far as I'm concerned, we're all very busy people. I'm quite happy to trust the working group to actually look at the grants, to go through them, to question them. Additionally, our papers are published a week before the meeting. We've all got time within that week to read our papers and to go back to either the working group, to go back to our clerk, to go back to to the finance director and ask questions about them. And then raise it through the working group. We shouldn't have to be waiting till now to basically be looking at what is peanuts for a council of this size.
Good point. And again, I think certainly my intention is to discuss these points in the next agenda item, but I don't disagree with what you're saying. Councillor O'Leary.
Yeah, I think we probably could have discussed all these by the time we've taken the debate whether we vote them on block or not. If we're going to start voting them, start pushing them when they come to this committee, we then stop inviting the people to come, because we're really, I mean, I don't mean to be rude, I think our time, you know, we expect to be. I think it's unfair to bring these people along and not ask many questions and they can go.
Yes, I agree completely, and we'll cover that next item. We are hamstrung a little by the fact that the current policy.
Yes, I understand. No, I understand.
We want good people who have, sorry, not we just have to invite them, we expect them to attend in case you have any questions while we debate whether or not we should be asking you any questions. As we have a proposal and seconder for voting on block, shall we deal with that element now, vote on it, and then see where we are?
Can I clarify, if we're voting, are we going to vote on block apart from the ones that people have an interest in?
That wasn't the proposal, so we're going to vote. We're going to vote on block. We're going to vote on the principle of approving them all on block right now. I think I've got a rough idea how it's going to go, but then we can move on to potentially dealing with them individually, yeah, or at least taking out the ones when no one has a pecuniary interest, and we can get those good people. Councillor Taylor.
Can I just ask, wouldn't it be quite simple if, when you say, would you like to vote for them on block? If whoever's got a pecuniary interest just says, I will vote for all of these, but not, I have pecuniary interest in X, Y, Z, and cannot vote. And then we can just vote on block.
By the time we've discussed all this, could we just vote whether we're going to do it en bloc? We aren't, because we've got some people who've got an interest. So we're going to say no, and then we're going to do all of the rest, and those two are going to be done separately, and we can move on to discuss a working group on the
Yeah.
grant policy, which seems to me like a good way through. Apologies, Chairman.
No problem at all. No, thank you. So voting for all 6 of the grant applications on block. Votes for. Votes against. Abstentions.
Not voting on that, we're voting whether we vote on block. No, we're not.
So that motion was defeated. Right,
We're not voting, we didn't just vote for that occasion.
members of the public, thank you for bearing with us. There are, in summary, there are 6 grant. Thank you very much, Louvier Society. Enjoy life with it. Enjoy your freedom. Yeah, we got Louvier today. Excellent. We dealt with the foreign one. There are 6 grant applications in front of us today. I am aware of pecuniary interests from councillors relating to 2 of those. Specifically, Triton BJJ and the skate park. So, councillors, I propose that we vote on the other 4 en bloc. Unless anyone has anything, any question they would like to ask about any of those 4.
Citizens Advice Bureau, I'm very happy to support that, but I am concerned that they're asking for this money for 5 years. And it does worry me that we should not be committing next year's budget or the year after or the year after, because we just don't know what is ahead of us. So I would prefer to see that voted for this year. And then we'll bring it back next year and we can look at it again.
Sorry, going to say, councillor.
Just to give some context, councillor Nixon, so from our previous experience with the Finance and Governance Committee, we found that this particular applicant was coming back year on year and was being supported year on year for the obvious good work they did. So we then set up what is known as a So if you, could you define that for council? So I don't think that's.
So just to expand, the CAB application was considered last year, in which they did request having a service level agreement, which covers years, which it has been done on other grant applications previously. It was supported for 1 year last year purely so that it gave the new councillors that opportunity to have a look at it and then to commit a number of years if they so wish. But the Finance and Governance Committee, when they previously supported it, did think that an SLA over a number of years would be a good thing to have. They just decided not to do it at that time purely because of the new council which was coming in May.
Thank you. Councillor Weller.
To add to that, you'll be able to confirm this, that for people like the CAB, and there will be others, sometimes they're applying for very big grants and they need to be able to give those other grant givers an assurance of how much they're expecting to get from other little pots around, and this is an assurance for them in that situation, right?
Councillor Harris.
Can I suggest that it's one of those items that's looked at in the next item on the agenda for the working group on grants to take away
We need to.
and come back with the way of working it.
Sorry for clarity, but SLAs in future SLAs.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, not this particular one.
We still vote on this one now.
Excellent, thank you, good. Councillor Nickinson, you happy that we've answered your question?
Yes, that's fine.
Thank you. Any other questions? Committee? I think I already proposed it.
Yeah.
Second. Thank you very much. Councillor Vernon. Votes for, just so we all remember, the voting for all four of those en bloc.
Check the amounts are.
Sorry, yes, we're showing the papers, although we are
So that is unanimous.
wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, and the members of those organisations do not feel, you don't have to go, but don't feel compelled to stay. Okay, I'll make a point. I've driven an hour and a half here to answer questions. Right.
Yeah.
And now I'm going back saying all words, so that's it's a really poor system.
Yeah.
Really sorry.
We make a
We
note
agree.
of that.
Thank you.
Next discussion.
Are we doing the other things?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Enjoy your evening. Yeah. I'm happy to move on to the DJJ one next. You don't have to leave the room.
I'll just abstain.
Okay.
Are you proposing?
I will propose that we approve Triton, Councillor Weller is seconding. Votes for?
Not missing tribal.
No, definitely, because it's different people and the
That is 7 chair.
votes against. Abstentions.
Thank you.
Excellent, which leaves us with the skate park. Two councillors already indicated a interest, so I will propose that we vote for that one. Councillor Furman would love to second it. Sorry, Councillor
Sorry,
Nicholson.
could I just make a comment? It just seems a little bit churlish to me that we've just knocked those few pounds off skate park, but it's such an important thing for the youth of Weymouth.
Would you want to recommend?
I'd like to recommend that we give them the full amount that they asked for.
I don't have I know the amount,
150.
Not 150.
is that because it's not everyone using it is from the Weymouth town area.
Yeah.
That is. It is with convention.
Hard to actually,
But we can leave that to the grant committee deciding that.
We've just done it for trying to be chairman.
Yeah.
we're following policy.
I'm not having much luck at this today.
No, but
Welcome to finance and governance.
you're answering, I don't think you're asking a silly question.
Yeah.
In charities, sector all my working life.
Yeah.
I mean, I would, you know, this is why I'm sort of asking these questions.
No, I think you're doing a great job in clarifying
Yeah.
what we do and why. And for the next item, highlighting where we can discuss
Yeah.
whether things need changing around that. So no, that's absolutely fine.
Can I give a reason for
Carry on,
why we
please.
try and identify the proportion that are claimed? Even though it's a charity that's providing this. If you remember last year or the year before, there was a big debate and discussion on community governance review. A lot of people who live outside the borough do want to use borough facilities, but not pay for them. And I think we've got to be aware of that.
Thank you, councillor Harris. So. That's a good point. Would anyone like to second councillor Nicholson's councillor Wells?
Sorry, no, I thought you were proposing to accept the grant. My apologies.
Sorry, councillor
Really
Nicholson.
no mates, so.
Will be your friend.
Yeah.
Thank you. In any other questions? Points?
Propose that we.
I think I did already propose and councillor Furman seconded, so votes for approving as per the recommendations. Votes against. None, abstention.
8 abstentions.
I know.
I like it. Yeah, we know. Abstentions because you have to.
There we go.
Councillor Dickinson?
I'm not voting.
Abstention.
Kerry, thank you very much. That
Take us through, Chair.
does take us through all the grants. Thank you very much for your patience.
Just also second what that gentleman said, I understand that it goes to a grants committee and they make the decision on where the funding might go, and you might like to pass more funds. However, me coming here gives me an insight to how the councils run, and as a local charity person that supports local people in the area, I think it's really important you vote them one at a time. I think a blanket cover is, I don't know, I think you need insight to each charity that's attending. And you also need to give us a chance to explain to you about what we do. I know it might take your time up, and I get that, but we need to appreciate you and what you do as much as you might appreciate what we do as local charities and who we support. So I understand your blanket, let's pass them all through because your grants committee has passed them. But I still think you need to learn a little bit about where you're giving your money to.
I personally, I appreciate the feedback.
Yeah.
I'm sure the other councillors do too.
Yeah.
Councillor Weller, you had your hand up.
You might, if you can bear it,
Yeah.
you might like to sit in on what we discuss just for the next item,
Yeah, right.
because I want to
They're in
get
coffee and
back
biscuit.
exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
Do make yourself a
It's
coffee and some biscuits in the meantime.
like probably listening to each one separately, but I think it's important that we engage with you as much as you do with us.
So just have a listen to
Yeah.
it, and we'll feedback is useful for what we say
Yeah.
Yeah,
in a few minutes.
agreed. Councillor Bowell.
I just want to assure you that the papers have gone round, and we have,
Yeah.
we're not just, oh, I'm sure it's all fine, someone has to look at it.
For a blanket vote, then we probably wouldn't attend, and I think it's really important that we see what you're doing.
But having read the papers,
Yeah.
one of us may, as it happens, you did a great application and so we've
Yeah.
chosen to vote it through. But, you know, we may have had a question and on this occasion, we didn't happen to have one.
I'd say on behalf of our clients and auditors, thank you very much for the support and thank you for the discussion that took place, and that security for us, SLA is really important. But we can plan ahead, and at this point by councillor, well, I did make a big difference to us to know ahead. For other applications, we can show that we are supported by the council, it really helps to generate other income. So thank you very much to all of you.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. I'm going to say.
Good evening.
Thank you. Item 9 is the grant policy and matrix review working group.
Yeah,
Goodness me. Deputy Councillor, you are pleasure of introducing this item.
I think there's anything to discuss, James.
No, no.
Done it all.
I'm seeing medals all around.
So, put a bit of context, just repeating previously what I said slightly earlier. The grant policy was considered in March this year. And it was put forward to the matrix as a system which was hopefully going to improve the process. Members have now had the opportunity to use that revised policy and matrix, and they may have come up with some issues with the process which we currently have. The recommendation is that we form the grants working group, which includes looking at the matrix, to have a look at the wide-ranging issues around the whole process. So it's not just about the form itself, it's about all of those issues which we've discussed this evening, which I think would benefit from that in-depth discussion. And it was agreed back in March that this committee would review the grants policy, and by having this working group, it means they can meet over the next month or so and report back in September with recommendations of how the process can be improved.
Thank you. With Councillor Webb, and then anyone else after that like to speak on the issue.
Bearing in mind the feedback from our grant applications this evening. First of all, I absolutely think we do need to sit and look at this and work out how it works. We're always, you know, we're still a very new council, and we do need to tinker at these things a little bit to get them absolutely right. And I think we're close to being absolutely right, but we're not there yet. And with that feedback, it might be that we say we will get the applicants in to explain their applications to the grant committee rather than F&G,
Yes.
so that we're able to really drill down onto exactly what everything is with the time to do it, because with the best will in the world, when we in past have I'll say interrogate, but it wasn't an interrogation. When we've questioned the grant applicants in this meeting, there have always been time constraints, and there's little bits of information that are a little bit vague. Doing it that way around will make it much more transparent. It will allow the grant applicants to have a very clear idea of why we're thinking one way or the other, and any negotiations over that grant application can be done at that point. So, you know, that's what I would, if possible, like to be on that working group, and that's what I would suggest to the working group that we do, and that will, I think, will fulfil the needs of grant applicants and fulfil the needs both of this committee and the wider council team.
Absolutely. Thank you. Councillor Harris.
I was going to say exactly what Peter said, with one extra point made to it, and that is that clearly if you're discussing with the grants committee and there is an issue that they can't agree on, then that's when they will say, please come along to the full committee meeting and we can discuss that in greater depth with a greater number of people in order to resolve any difficulties that there may have been in them recommending fully what you were looking.
Councillor O'Leary.
Yeah, I mean, I've served on planning committees for a number of years now. We have a scheme of delegation planning. You know, not every planning application comes before the planning authority, because you'd be dogged down.
Yeah.
And everybody speaks on, you know, it would be bizarre about having to talk about the conservatory or their patio or whatever. Could we not have a scheme of where the grants are called in? Do we really, you know, CAB, we don't really need them to come on a yearly basis, do we, and explain their work? But perhaps in every couple of years, we feel, or grant committee feels that they would like to call it in, or the committee as a whole would like to call it in, on a scheme of delegation and scheme of calling in schemes we do the planning.
Yeah, final logic. Councillor Taylor.
It was, sorry, could I just ask an opinion? I mean, these days, an awful lot of us are working electronically. I personally come to very few meetings. Most of my meetings are online these days. Do you think grant applicants would be comfortable if we talked to them online, or would they rather have face to face? Just taking on board what the gentleman said, that he's driven an hour and a half to come here.
I personally feel you can't get everything across online. You don't,
Okay.
I mean, I always speak from the heart, because I'm
Yeah.
a resident born and bred, and I love this town to bits and everybody lives in it. And I always think that you can get yourself across in your voice, but you can't, typing it is just cold. I always think like a lovely phone call from a councillor, or it's for me personally, a phone call. I mean, I can put my application through
Yeah.
online, but actually talking to somebody, a human talking is.
I think a lot of us,
Video calls, fine.
a lot of us work on video
Yeah.
calls, we work
Yeah.
on Teams, we work
Video,
on
Teams,
Zoom.
Yeah,
That's 90% of my
Everything,
work
yeah.
these days is
we've
done
just
like
done
that.
one of those with Peter Harrison Foundation and Zoom call
Yeah.
meeting. And you can really get
Mm.
your
Yeah.
story across.
Mm,
Or give people the option.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
okay, I just wondered what your view would be on that,
Not reinventing
whether
the wheel.
you'd be
No,
comfortable.
it's interaction with somebody.
Yeah, but Teams, Zoom is what I meant.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
And if I may, another aspect that can be considered is whether we had all of you here tonight, all sitting there, and you all had to listen. Now, you might all want to listen to everybody else's to see what they were doing, and it is good to share information like that in the network. But equally, if you were given a specific time to talk to the committee, it might be a better use of your time,
Yeah,
and you would be able to make that decision for yourself.
yeah, I think it's, for some people, it's quite daunting coming to a meeting
Yeah.
and you've got to speak, you know, it's, yeah. But I think the interaction is really important for councillors and local groups, I think, you know, it's
Yeah.
really, really important.
Absolutely.
For a small town.
Are you here for a grant application?
No, I'm here for the supplementary school.
Okay, sorry.
No, thank you for that. A good question, councillor Taylor. Thank you. Councillor Furman.
Thank you. So some of you will remember my chagrin at the changes to our policy 6 months ago. And surprise, surprise, we are in this situation. So I really do welcome this item on the agenda. I'd love it if we could get as many of us on that group as well. And already the conversations being had in terms of with each of you, and I can already hear the great ideas that we've got to improve, which I will take Councillor Wellers with a bit of salt. It's good, but it's not. but it's not nearly there. It's a long way from there. There's lots of things in this policy that we can change. It goes from just the simple fact that we've spent nearly half of our budget this year to how do we spread that out over the year, because organisations pop up at all times of year, not just within the close to the financial year. I really do take the point of Councillor Leary around the similarities between planning and having to bring through every single thing. And I think we kind of got through some weeds with that tonight around just picking out individual applications that we wanted to talk on. But I think what is most important when we go away and do this is that the applicants feel that this process is best fit for them. It's not best fit for us. It's got to be time wise, but I think there's a really good double-edged sword that we can create for us to come up with something. And then whether it's Lisa or Triton or the basketball club or the local theatre club, that we actually go to those organisations and say, look, we've just had a look at this policy, we've redone it. What do you think about it? Would this encourage you to vote apply further? Or would it, or does it turn you off a bit in the process? And all those things like the working group and bringing the experts from the community to those working groups, that's really where we should be at. And it all comes back to the fact that we should be looking at 3.5 million budget, 4 million budget with our big eyes and, making sure we do the best job for us and the community with those small things. So I'd love to be on this committee and I'd welcome anybody else.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think you make a very good point about we need to speak to people like yourselves before we come up with another policy and then inflict it on the town and the charities and organisations. That it needs to be a then there needs to be a bit of a consultancy around that. Or it doesn't have to be a formal one per se,
Exactly,
but the committee, when we form it, needs to make sure that it goes out and talks to different groups. So I would agree with that. Any other points around that, or should we do a show of hands of people that would like to be on that working group?
We have to agree the recommendation and then do.
Could I just say, Chair, if it's okay?
I think so.
Oh, thank you. We had I was asked to be part of the working group on grants. We've never met. It's only ever been done on email. So I thought, and I think Councillor Berman was trying to say that, I thought we were part of a group that looked at the small grants. And that's what I was talking about when you put the email out about the small grants. What is that working group still going? Are we talking about a different working group?
That, as I understand it, that committee that we elected the members of at our last meeting 6 weeks ago still exists. I thought, I'm not on that committee, but my understanding was that it didn't need to meet in person.
No.
And that it covered all grants before they came to this committee.
Why?
Not, is that?
If I could just offer some clarification.
Please do, yeah.
So if we go prior to March 2020, we had a grant working group which was formed just to look at the smaller groups. The purpose was that is to try and streamline the process and speed up those groups who came to us who wanted those smaller sums of money could get a decision quite quickly, and that group was there to do those grants which are under 500. Back in March, the policy was amended and it was expanded so that the working group were then to look at not only the small grants but also the ones above 5,000, so that they could try and tease out any of the issues on those before it came to this committee, so that there was a majority could be happy that when they came to this committee and the rest of the committee would be happy with the due diligence. It was prior to March, just under 500 since March, because of what's agreed, it includes
All grants. That's where my confusion came in. I thought we were still on the up to £500 working group. We had to decide, and that's why the four of us to put on it, and then the town clerk and yourself were on it, because we have had emails
absolutely
about that.
and
I
that was
didn't realise that we were on the full grants. Okay, that's where the confusion came in, and I apologise for that.
That's okay, don't apologise, but good to clarify. Councillor Nixon.
I didn't realise either that we weren't meeting. I mean, that these emails that have been coming around form part of that working group, because I don't think we are a working group if we're just emailing backwards and forwards. We've all got the option to put ourselves forward to go on to it, and if there's enough people who would do it, I think it'd be much more beneficial to actually have a meeting.
Okay, so I think it's a good point, thank you. I think I'll go within just a moment. I think we've highlighted that the any existing subcommittees structure doesn't work. And perhaps if I could move what hasn't worked so far this council, I would suggest that when we vote on what we're going to do with any future working group, that we agree that we end the current system such as it is and replace it with a working group that is going to go away and look at how we make a working group work. That's a phrase. It isn't at the moment, clearly. There's far too much confusion among members of that group, and there aren't very many of us, so it shouldn't be that confusing. Sorry, Councillor.
Yes, I would like to propose just to scrap all working groups to do with gratification. I'm personally, I would rather go through every application if I have something to say yes, if not, we'll just pass it. But as that is not the common view and it's a compromise, why do we not just have a scheme of delegation where if we all, like it's been said prior, we all have prior notice of these grants coming in. If we see one we particularly have concerns around or questions around, we can then ask the individuals to come in, discuss it, and then go through it at the meeting in that regards. I just think any form of a working group is going to be panicky if they've all got to meet face to face with this, because if we're saying it's too petty, not too petty, too small for the committee, and surely it's too small for a smaller committee as well. And people clearly don't like the idea of doing it via email. So why don't we just have a scheme of calling these applications in and then discuss them face to face before we get some.
I wouldn't want to upset you, but I think we will have to have a working group to come up with how it will work ongoing. But before, unless you're proposing that system that we just said now, there is a policy that exists now and we can't just wipe it away without replacing it with something.
Can I just say, we seem to be doing the work of the working group that we're just
Yeah.
about to be appointing.
Get them.
Can we please get on with the committee? Can we just set up a working group and trust them to actually pick up all the points that have been said tonight? If anybody has got any more points they want to put onto this working group, just let David Civil know, Councillor Civil know, who can pass them on to the working group. But can we just vote on, for a start off, whether we actually set up this working group? And I'd like to propose it, please.
Excellent.
So can we go?
Votes for?
We need to nominate the councillors before we.
No.
No, we're
need
just
to set the
voting.
working group.
We're voting on whether we're going to do it.
Oh, right.
And then we're going to.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Clear? Votes for, votes against. Abstentions. Okay. Good. That's carried. Right then, who'd like to be on it? And so, for clarity, that's Councillor Nickinson, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Weller, Councillor Furman, and Councillor. Which you've already typed.
Put your hand up, Louise, and say, and councillor Bell.
Could I request that we meet on Teams, please?
Hybrid.
Hybrid Teams. Yeah.
You can. I propose that those 5 people form that working group and we get on with it ASAP afterwards. Anything like to second? I'd like to make a point, sorry, Councillor.
No, I thought we'd finished that because I was just going to say, could we bring item number 13 forward so that the gentlemen of the public
Yeah,
didn't have
that's what
to
we're
see
doing.
it.
That was our plan to do. Thank you. No, we are still waiting for
Got to keep Lisa here as long as possible.
previous.
I'll get my original knocking on your door.
You will.
Yeah, sorry. So did I have a second? Thanks. Furman.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Votes for? Votes against? Abstentions?
I wasn't listening, I'm very sorry.
That's incredibly honest.
A bit too honest.
Yeah, distracted by flashing lights. No, I
I saw the front on the back of my shirt and I'm like, that's where I know I'm from, sorry, I'm like a whole.
we're voting on whether or not you are happy with those 5 people forming.
Yes,
Anyway.
I'm very happy.
Very happy.
So shall we just do that again? Votes in favour. Votes against. Abstentions. Carried. Thank you very much. Thus end of item 9. Thank you very much. Everybody.
Mr. Chairman, just as a point, is the current working group gone?
Yes.
I won't
Actually,
get
when
any-
it goes back- No, it's a good point. Would you like to propose that we,
No, you cannot.
no, because we have the new,
Existing.
yes, it still exists. Name it, please.
So I am still part of the working group for grants, small and.
Yes,
That's where my confusion came in. I thought it was just the small grant. Apologies with defence.
And I think it's important that that carries on like that because we will have some grants possibly for September when we also have the response to this group.
Yeah.
So it will need somebody working on it.
Still on.
Thank you. I propose that we skip forward to item 13. Well, the most patient member of the room. Thank you, sir. Ian, are you going to introduce the lot more stories, recycling with Anthony?
Again, very briefly, Chair, 2002, part of the Lodmore Country Park, including public toilets, there was an area there where it was agreed that the cycles which we use by cycling without age could be stored. We're trying to formalise that arrangement now. So, and tie that arrangement up into the issuing of a licence, Chair, so that they can continue to use that facility in terms for over the next, I think it said 5 years.
We do, yes, you, Mr. Chumsey, waited very patiently. Would you like to address this? You don't have
They don't need so much. All I'd like to say is that that store is, we've used it for last year and it's perfect.
Excellent.
There's room for 4 or 5 bikes in there. We use it to go to the care homes on the Dorset Road. People meet us in the car park there. It is if we were writing a wish list, it would be that place. So for us to have it for 5 years would give us a lot of security. The charity, as you know, has been going 5 years, so that will take us to our 10-year anniversary. So I really just hope you would rubber stamp or say yes. And we then carry on using it.
said no, thank you very much indeed. Councillors, any comments? Councillor Dickinson.
In the impact assessment, it's got the financial implications in red. It says Weymouth Town Council will receive a peppercorn rent and cycling without age would contribute towards the legal fees. Why is it in red, Ian?
I think it's because it reflects the fact that we'll be getting a peppercorn rent service from a Weymouth Town Council financial perspective, rather than the advantages that it has.
Surely us getting a rent would be a good financial thing, even if it's peppercorn. I couldn't understand why it was in red. It just
In principle, and I'm not going to say on this occasion, but if you put it out, for example, to the city after tenure, you could get a much higher rent.
Yeah.
Worth foregoing that to offer a peppercorn rent based on the advantage.
Well, I think it's an advantage to us as well. I hope.
It's better than
Thank you.
getting 10 peppercorns.
I think the point is that financially, is it going to contribute over and above the costs to Weymouth Town Council? No, it isn't. But that's not the point of why we're doing it.
Why is it sorry?
No, it's good. Councillor Taylor.
It's just a quick question on the licence, and don't take this at all the wrong way. I'm just wondering whether there's any break clauses within the 5 years, whether you're proposing to put any break clauses in it. I'm just thinking that should you find something else that you want to move to, I don't want you to be tied into keep outdated over big, and paying all the electricity and everything else to do with it.
Well, if we weren't in there, we wouldn't be paying, wouldn't be using electricity.
But you'd still be responsible for the place if you have a licence for it
Yeah.
and weren't using it. That's what I just wanted to make sure that
We
you weren't.
wouldn't want a break. Because that would be, you'd have a break.
No, it doesn't
Not
mean.
necessarily. We could have a break
clause.
clause that's just in your favour
Yeah.
if we chose to.
I suppose not, from my perspective as trustee, 5 years would be brilliant. So I don't want
You don't want
anything.
to, you don't have to. That's it. Absolutely not. No, but fine.
Can I propose the recommendation?
Thank you. Councillor. Votes for? Votes against? Abstentions?
As long as you pick me up, now I've got a meeting.
That would-
Thank you.
Do that.
Can you give my husband a go with it, please?
Yes, Yeah.
Okay, I'll get in touch with you.
yeah, just give it, yeah, and the pilot, you want to ride and passenger.
Yeah, he's seriously disabled.
Look, yeah, that's exactly what it's all about.
Okay, but right.
The agreement doesn't.
We already voted.
Sorry, we've already voted.
Thank you very much indeed.
No, thank you for your patience.
Thank you, cheers.
Item 10, going back to the agenda, it's a 4:1 financial monitoring report, which the Deputy Town Clerk will introduce.
Yeah, so members will have had the financial information in their agendas and the appendices which go with that. Just a couple of points I'd just like to sort of mention just before I hand back to you, Chair. Q1 financial monitoring in terms of predicting where we're going to be at the end of the year, which we, as we go through the year, we try to do so that we know that we're able to understand. But because there's a lot of information which isn't yet known, for example, we haven't hit the proper holiday season, so it's not until the end of Q2 that actually a great deal of information which is beneficial. We haven't got that yet, so a lot of the projections are just that we're going to use the budgets, as you'll appreciate, but I think it's a good thing, the size of those budgets, because it's a first time some of the members would have had that. And it just allows you to sort of get to know what the budgets look like and where they sit. Just a reminder, and I say this sort of slightly tongue in cheek and with a smile, that the purpose of budget monitoring is to provide that overview and looking at the budgets to ensure that they don't overspend, and if they do, or it looks like they do, that this committee can agree some corrective action and recommend that to full council so that we can try and bring things back on track. It's not actually to look at the details within those, the real detail within those budget lines, which has already been done as part of the budget process. And it's not about looking at the service delivery and the reasons we do that, because that's part of the services committee's remit, but it's just to look at that governance arrangements around the budget. You'll see that we are anticipating already, though, that we are going to look like we're going to underspend. And the two main reasons for that is around the vacancies which have existed in the first part of this year and the additional interest on investments which we are going to get this year due to the continued high rates which we are receiving. Obviously, if those goes down, then our predictions, the rates go down, our prediction will change. So we are looking okay at this precise moment in time, Chair. We're happy if there's any questions to answer, but I'm not proposing that this committee agrees any corrective action to be reported to.
Understood. Thank you. Any questions or points that members of the committee would like to make? No? In which case, I would like to propose that we agree to recommend the first quarter financial report for the period ending 30th June this year to the full council. Seconded. Thank you, Councillor O'Leary. Votes for? Votes against? Well, everyone voted for, so there we go. That saves some time. Thank you all. Item 11 is refers to the seafront taps that has been brought to us from E&S committee. Unfortunately, Charmaine can't be with us this evening. However, our Deputy Town Clerk will be introducing this item.
This, as you say, is on the back of a report which was considered at the last meeting of the Environment and Services Committee. The recommendation at that committee was to fund to do the maintenance on 10 of the operational taps, and funding had already been set aside to do that. It was agreed or recommended at the Environment and Services Committee that they had an additional 3 taps to be part of the project where the funding hadn't already been allocated, and they asked the Finance and Governance Committee try and find some funding to be able to do those additional 3 taps. So this report is all about trying to find the funding for those 3 taps. We originally said, Chair, when we first looked at this, that actually the funding could come from the Planned Maintenance Reserve, which is already being set up, and we can use that. I probably would just like to change that recommendation slightly, Chair. And in view of the projected underspend, which we considered in the previous item, I would probably say that the recommendation could be that the costs of these additional 3 taps are absorbed within the underspend, which has been predicted. Should there not be any funds available at the end of the year, then it's then funded from the planned maintenance.
Okay, that's clear. Thank you very much. I could literally. But we consider that a change to the officer recommendation,
So that becomes would be my recommendation, Chair, that the recommendation would be to approve the funding for an additional free tax to be funded from projected underspend for 2024-25. Should there not be an underspend at the year end, then that funding be met from the matrix.
that's clear, thank you. Councillors, any questions?
I'd just like to know what is more, why is the planned maintenance reserve worth defending rather than the budget that's an underspend? What's the difference between those two bits of budget that make the change necessary?
I think for me, Chair, it just leaves the planned maintenance reserve intact
Yeah.
to fund the which has already been agreed, so we wouldn't need to add. If members so desire, they can keep the recommendation as stated, and we can fund it from the planned maintenance reserve. I just thought for the amount which is involved, if it was a lot much larger sum, I would probably still be sticking with the reserve because we need that certainty that funding will be there.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson.
First of all, thank you, Ian. I'd like to go with Ian's recommendation on the wording of his recommendation. The only question I'd ask is, in the impact assessment, you've got resources. There will be 5 days of officer time required to arrange the purchase and installation of all new taps before handing over to his. Seems a hell of a long time, Ian. 5 days of an officer's time just to order some taps and ask a builder to put them in.
I would assume, and I can get an answer from Councillor Dickinson, but I would assume that involves some supervision time being on the seafront to ensure that the confidence understanding what the remit is and overseeing that as well. It's right.
Well, thank you. No, thank you.
Councillor Taylor.
Can I just ask a real naughty question? I apologise because I should have asked this earlier. I didn't read the papers. Have I got this right? So we've got 18 taps. We were planning on that are in disrepair, it said on the first paragraph. So we're replacing 10 of them as part of our planned maintenance. We're asking for an additional 3. So what happens to the 5 that are still in disrepair? And I don't know. That's what I'm asking.
So I'm from finance and governance, and I think they're going to be left to rot. I think the idea is that we replace like for like the taps that are working or nearly working.
Yeah.
We had a look at a big map of the beach, and
Yeah,
we identified where there was a huge gap between, and we identified some taps that needed to be replaced. I think that's.
Because rather than leaving them in disrepair, can we get rid of them all?
I was under the impression that's what we were doing because they look
Getting rid of them.
because they look dreadful. They were being taken out rather than looking as though they're taps that don't work. They're being removed, capped off.
No, thank you.
Okay, I do
We can
apologise.
confirm
I should have
that.
asked this ahead of the.
We can compare that. Change company.
Again, there's 2 answers to it.
No, do carry on.
There is the 2 answers to that is that obviously that would have been a discussion at the Environmental Services Committee, so I'm assuming that they would have asked the same questions. But if you'd like me to gain a clarification, just for interest
If you could
purposes,
just say
I can get that to you.
unless anybody was on the ENS and
Did pay full attention.
it's just the details, isn't it? Okay.
Who's leaving the room with that?
Councillor Wetton.
That was, I was just, that my assumption was that the taps that are beyond repair are being capped off and removed.
Okay, thank you.
That is it.
Councillor Dickinson, did you say that you proposed?
Yeah, I proposed Ian's
The lady
wording.
wording, and
Yep.
seconded by Councillor Furman. Votes for? Votes against? 1 and
I'm abstaining because I've got an interest.
It's a second home on the beach.
Don't come for tea because the tap doesn't work.
Are you clear, Chris?
Next year, we can.
Yes.
Item 12 relates to Tumbledown and the approval of contract plan for the main contractor. Again, Deputy Town Clerk, if you'd like to introduce this one.
Yeah, so this is probably sounds a lot more complicated than it isn't, but it's just really something which we need to do because of our financial regulation. So as part of the history, the project to building a Tumbledown was previously agreed by full council to be undertaken. The budgets were also agreed, and it was noted that there's additional funding of 100,000, which was secured to also do this project. Because we now have the results of the tendering process, we know how much it's going to cost, and our financial regulations state that any single payment over £100,000 needs to just be agreed by full council, which just puts a slight control in there. So we are just following our financial regulations, and we're just asking this committee to recommend to full council when that commitment for the result of that can exercise is approved.
So in many ways, this one is actually close to being a rubber stamping exercise, as opposed to the debate previously. Any, bearing in mind that we've already approved it and budgeted for, any other points that we'd like to make, Councillor O'Leary?
Yes, obviously it is a rubber stamp, just once again, a huge amount of money going on Tumbledown Farm. More and more money being ploughed into it, and I think the question is going to have to start soon. Where does it not end? How much can you just do one?
Councillor Well.
I understand what Councillor O'Leary is saying. I was at Tumbledown last week. Each time I go there seems to be even more people benefiting from the project. So the social element, I think, is enormously good. So I do understand, and I do think that it needs to be watched carefully. But at the moment, I think it's something for which we can be very proud.
Sure. Is there a way of not quantifying it per se, but understanding exactly easily which groups are using it and how many people are using it on a monthly basis?
I wonder whether we can, when we get some feedback from those groups as to how many of their users are actually going there and what the value is, because the mental health value, you can't quantify a mental health asset really, can you? But the feedback would perhaps help those people who aren't fully involved.
Yeah, absolutely.
As I say, I mean, I've always been fully committed to it, and I don't approve of everything. It's not quite what I thought it would be, but I'm very happy with what it is, and the social element of it, I think, is money well spent.
Yeah, absolutely. My musings there were not to try and trip it up, as it were, but so that we can show the town in general what it does and why it's good.
So that we can add that in, those good news stories, and that feedback might be very useful, and our comms team can help with that.
Sure. No, that's a very good point. Thank you. Councillor Furman.
Yes, I think it would be useful, especially because we are a new council, for those that have not served on it. And actually, I will include myself. I've had other priorities within the council over the last 5 years, and I perhaps have taken my eye off the ball in terms of what Tumbledown is doing. And I very much came to quantify this to you, Chair, but it wasn't the right word.
Yeah.
But it does need some sort of I'd like to know how much we spent, and I'd like to know how much social value we got out of it, because I'm very much in favour of social value, but I do want to be observing what we spend on it, and we continue to spend on it. And like I said, it's not been a project that I've got particular interest in, so I would like to engage in some sort of, let's say, formal report, but something where we can find out more.
Councillor O'Leary. And then
No, I fully agree with what Councillor Wallace said. I think the two things we have to look at is, number one, I'd be very interested to see the feedback from those using it and who is using it. I think if I went back to the estate and said to people about Tumbledown, they look at me and say, how are you on about it? And a lot of people don't know anything about it or about it. You get first-hand experience. And I think the other question has to be is how much money is it costing? How much money is it going to be making? And if it is running at a loss, how long are we going to continue subsidising it if that subsidy is a large amount? You know, if it's a small amount of money, you know, I understand we're not a business, we are here to provide a service, but if it's a large amount of money, I think we would have to then look at actually whether it's something we continue to subsidise. I'm not saying we'll shut it down and build, you know, housing estate on it, because I'm sure that would give Councillor Harris a heart attack. I'm not saying that at all, but I'm just saying I think we have to look at the factors, the financial side of it, and the usage of it.
We would be an odd finance and governance committee if we didn't look at the financial.
Yes, no, I agree. I mean, I bought some lovely jam from there as well.
Chili jam, councillor.
Councillor Weller and then Councillor Harris.
All of your points are absolutely valid. So when you get an opportunity, you should pop down.
I've been.
Good. There are aspects where we're investing money, but we are ultimately going to be saving money. And that's useful. I held my mayoral civic day there the entire day. I didn't take them anywhere else earlier this year. Mayors from throughout the county and the Dorset Sheriff attended. They were all unbelievably envious of the facility that we had there, talking to our users, and looking at the work that they're doing with, I will say, the disadvantaged with mental health groups and so on. They were unbelievably impressed and couldn't believe that we were delivering such a successful project for a relatively small budget. That, you know, so many of them wish they had something they could replicate. So in those terms, I hope you find that a little bit reassuring. And I'd be very surprised if on your estate you haven't got people who belong to Dorset Abilities or Diverse Abilities or to Munsey's who are using it. So it is, you know, if you don't need any of those facilities, you would tend not to know about it. And I'm sure that, you know, an awful lot of people in White haven't got a clue about it. It's if you need it.
And the question is they're paying.
It's there. But that's a matter of us communicating that.
Thank you, Councillor Harris.
Yes, can I sort of look at one other aspect? I talked to all the schools, heads of all the schools in Weymouth about the prospect of using Tumbledown Farm. They can't use it yet until we've done this investment. So in one sense, you've got to have the money in order to be able to provide the facility. We'll be moving our nursery there in order to save 27,000 a year, which is going to go up with inflation as well anyway. But more importantly, when those children can use it, are we going to be wanting to charge the schools so that they can't actually afford to bring their children there because they'll have the costs of bringing the children to the centre? Or are we going to say, this is to the advantage of our children in Weymouth? We are going to subsidise that. And then we've got to go into all the aspects, and we should be looking at whether it is good value, clearly, but we are not going to make a profit out of those children because they need all the money they can to actually provide the education in the schools. But they've all valued the idea of bringing their children to that site. But they can't yet until we've got this building there because we need the toilets, we need the classroom. So, you know, it's a matter of not jumping too far into making it difficult until we can actually see it working properly.
You can say I'm aware a couple of people are earmarked to speak, and I'll come to you just a second. Very helpful, Councillor Harris, Councillor O'Leary, and others have made some very good points there. I'm just conscious that we don't become now talking shop around no, that's absolutely fine. The pros and cons of Tumbledown Farm and what it's going to become next. And what we're voting on is the recommendation to full council the approval of that single commitment. And I've not heard anyone say that we shouldn't yet with that in mind, councillor Dickinson, you'd ask.
Well, it was, sorry, I believe in a talking show. No, the thing about the nursery, that's paramount that the nursery moves. How is it going? I really would have loved an update because that will save us. I mean, if you go 5 years down the line, it's saving us 50 grand a year.
Yeah.
And that £50,000 could,
So an update on where that is or.
where are we to on that? Because it is really important. Because we get money from the bid, because we make lovely hanging baskets in the nursery. Once you get into there and the space that they need, things can improve. So it is a long-term project, but you must always remember it's taxpayers' money you're using.
Yeah, absolutely. Agreed. And councillor Taylor.
Just wanted to make a couple of points. Personally, I'm really committed to partnership working right the way across. We're nothing if we work on our own, we have to work in partnership, which is exactly what Tumbledown does. The other thing is about, I'm very much at the moment looking into prevention and how we can prevent services getting stuck with huge bills because of our inaction or our actions. Within all services who use Tumbledown, I'm sure they have the ability to actually monetize how much is being saved to society through attendance at Tumbledown. Just as a comparison, it's something I'm looking at housing. We do a lot of prevention of homelessness. And I'm saying to officers at the moment, how much does that actually save us? It's not just the council though. It's how much does it save the NHS? How much does it save the police? How much does it save social services? And just looking at the larger picture, there's certainly one community group that I worked with who produce figures for me every yearly or something like that for the grants that we give them. And they provide us with, because you have funded this has saved this organisation this organisation that. And there are standard figures around. Certainly for homelessness, Crisis published some and says that on average every household that you save from going homeless will save organisations such as ours so much. And I'm sure we could actually monetize it for what we're actually saying in society as a whole for Tumbledown. But then it brings me back to my original one. We have to partnership work. We have to work with everybody these days. The days have gone when 30, 40 years ago, when I was first interested in this stuff, we could do stuff on our own and just go for it because we had the money, we could just do it and it didn't matter. But I think these days there are ways of actually demonstrating that what we're doing is actually making a difference to our residents. And that's the actual question that we need to be asking. Isn't how much is it costing us, it's how much is it making a difference to the residents who are using it.
No, that's very helpful. Thank you. We've talked a lot around that and some very, very good and relevant points there, I think. Is it worth asking the town clerk if this could be an item for a members briefing in the near future? I say near future, September onwards. Excellent. Then,
Would it be handy, sorry to interrupt, would it be handy to have that members briefing at
Tumbledown?
Yes.
Because the radio.
Once you've got the building.
If we do it.
I'll get the bus?
If we do it
You can't
early
get a
enough
bus.
for the season, I mean, we don't want to,
Next thing.
we don't want to be there in the cold.
Yeah, we'll
it's a very good thing.
Council invited to the pets of community events fund. Musical trail.
Yes, the musical trail is going to be exciting, so I do recommend that.
Councillor O'Leary, are you prepared for exciting? Could you be prepared for exciting?
August the first.
First,
Not long.
it's geared towards young people, Councillor O'Leary.
That was never mentally.
No, spiritually.
Not spiritually.
No, that's a good,
Go into the proposal?
if you'd like to,
Yeah,
please
yeah.
do.
The officers recommend.
Well, you did, yes, and seconded by councillor Burnham. Votes for. Wonderful. And other than the information items, those are all the main items of our agenda. We don't have to discuss the information items. Please note them. And other than that, at 20 minutes past 8 o'clock,